Cyberpunk 2077 is a game about memory. Hold on. I have begun writing this script dozens of times and watched it sink and distort and fade away dozens of times as well. Writing and ruminating on memory is such a cliche and a perilously self-indulgent one at that, that I'm still not sure what I'm doing here other than pointing at things and saying, this one reminds me of that one. Joseph Joubert wrote, "A thought is a thing as real as a cannonball." Well, he wrote something in French, but I don't understand French, so I'm relying on the translation. And what's a memory if not a thought, moving through time, interacting with, and being affected by its surroundings? The act of remembering would then, by a maybe overly literal interpretation of the whole cannonball thing, be the cannonball's flight. This was supposed to be a video about memory and the similarities between Cyberpunk 2077 and Mass Effect Andromeda. Both games have their protagonist die early on and return to life because of an AI. Both games have repeated sections where someone else's memories are relived. That's all a bit of an oversimplification, but I figured the video would practically write itself. I was going to draw parallels between the games, but also include references to other games to further explore the topic of memory. So, if I'm doing a video about how those two games remind me of each other, certainly I ought to at least touch on how Kentucky Route Zero and Nine Planets Without Intelligent Life remind me of each other. One a video game, the other a webcomic, but both episodic road trip narratives with a tendency toward pretentious philosophical diversions. And though they both now exist in their completed forms, fans who were following either at the time they were in progress might remember not just the story, but how sometimes waiting years between installments can add a layer to the way the story itself is perceived. They also both have robots, which might have been a nice way to tie in a bit about AI or something. Or maybe how they also both explore the dehumanizing effects of late-stage capitalism. Very cyberpunk. Or, hey, things can even remind you of things that aren't video games. But to stay in the road trip milieu, the song Jazz on the Autobahn by the Felice Brothers brings to mind the movie Roadside Prophets. I've only seen that movie once, and it was more than a decade prior to when the song came out, so I'm not entirely sure why. I haven't gone back to rewatch the movie, so I can only tell you that I remember there being a scene in a diner. So, in my imagination, that diner was called Hamburger Heaven, and that's the connection between the movie and the song. Please do not correct me. Of course, we're pretty far removed from discussing the similarities of two video games as they relate to memory, and on to some introspective, impressionistic musings on how memories relate and interact with each other. So, sure, that's the thing now, obviously. The different types of being reminded of something. Sometimes from structural similarities, sometimes from personal associations between things, sometimes from seemingly random connections that can't quite be placed. Memory isn't just recalling a set of facts, it's a thing unto itself. The memory of seeing a movie may be mostly conveyed by the movie itself. And that's in line with how memories are often portrayed. But if you were to watch The Tree of Life, that wouldn't in any way impart my memory of seeing it at a matinee, having to use the restroom but holding it in for the last 30 minutes, or the disorienting adjustment of stepping out of a dark theater into a bright, warm afternoon. But it's not just a sequence of sense information that makes a memory distinct from a movie. It's the emotional reaction. Recollection not just of a set of circumstances, but a feeling of the world as it was. The song, Things Happen by Dawes, was on the radio as I approached the medical facility where I would have the MRI that detected my multiple sclerosis. I remember it clearly and specifically. My brother, on the other hand, who was driving, has no recollection of it. That's one of the funny tricks of memory. How some things stick for one person, but not for another, and how sometimes you know in the moment that the memory is going to stick. That song captures not just the mood of that moment, but the tone of an entire landmark in my life. Things happen. That's all they ever do. I keep trying to decide whether, or rather how to, share a memory about a departed friend, and this seems like the place to do it. The time between MRI and diagnosis was blessedly brief, but as you might imagine, anxiety-ridden. I made an effort to get in touch with numerous people for the first time in far too long. Among them was Shayna, an old co-worker and a friend. She let me know that she had just recently had a baby. I lacked the skills with words to convey the depth of the feeling that when I didn't know what was wrong with me, or how bad it would be, knowing that she was a mother made me feel better about the world. She was that kind of person. And in less than a year, she would be taken by her own health crisis. Memory is not just an accounting of facts and conditions. A song that reminds you of a departed friend and the feeling that evokes isn't necessarily an individually quantifiable memory. It can be that, but it can also be the vague feeling of the world as it was. It really feels like I ought to bring things together and tie it back in with that whole a thought is a thing as real as a cannonball bit, or have some other bow to put on this, but I guess not. I was also supposed to find ways to include mentions of the games Remember Me, Eliza, Neocab, and Three-Fourths Home. The movies, Dark City and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the book, Gun with Occasional Music, and a handful of other things, among them the Oakland Athletics and the Sigur Rós concert at Berkeley's Greek Theater in 2008. So, in conclusion, Mass Effect Andromeda deserved the continued developer support and second chance that Cyberpunk 2077 is getting. I think that's where the idea for this video started. And that's been the video. That's all I've got. I don't have an outro. I have a note to explain the video name, which is planned to be Memory Games Part 1, The Reminder. That is not because there is a Memory Games Part 2 that is imminent or even planned. It's just that I feel like a Memory Games Part 2, at the very least, is inevitable. So that'll be a thing. Thank you for watching.